Have you ever felt that gut-wrenching emptiness when someone you thought you could never live without suddenly drifts away? That silent, invisible shift when neither of you calls, texts, or even thinks to reach out. And yet, strangely, life doesn't stop. In fact, life begins to flip. You may feel a mixture of relief, regret, anger, or even liberation all at once. But here's the question no one asks. What if this exact moment, the quiet, uncomfortable pause, is the one where your life quietly rewrites itself? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Think about that. The absence of contact, the space between people, isn't a loss. It's a doorway. And what many fail to see is that this invisible door holds the key to mastery over your emotions, your desires, and your own narrative. Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the emptiness you're feeling isn't a void to be filled with someone else, but a canvas for your own growth. Epictetus reminds us it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Yet in the heat of loneliness, in the sting of silence, how often do we truly harness that principle? How often do we see separation not as punishment, but as an invitation to finally reclaim the life you didn't know was slipping past while you were waiting on someone else to text first? And here's the twist that almost no one tells you. Stopping contact doesn't just impact relationships, it transforms your perception of time, your inner peace, and even your self-respect. The first few days feel like walking through a storm with no umbrella. But what if I told you that this storm is actually clearing the air, polishing your perspective, and preparing your mind for clarity you never imagined? Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Right now, your imagination is exaggerating loss, conflict, or fear. But the reality, the Stoic reality, is that this silence is neutral. The power lies not in what they are doing or not doing, but in how you respond. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's easier said than done. I can't just stop thinking about them. And you're right. That is exactly why most people stay trapped in this invisible prison of waiting, hoping, and overanalyzing. But what if I show you a way to flip the narrative entirely? What if you could turn this period of non-contact into the most transformative chapter of your life? Picture this. While everyone else is chasing external validation, you're quietly building resilience. While everyone else is scrolling their phones, hoping for a ping, you're mastering your emotions. While everyone else is fearing loneliness, you're learning to embrace solitude as a teacher, a mirror, and a forge for your inner strength. Here's a practical reality check. In the absence of their messages, in the quiet of empty notifications, lies the power to reclaim your mornings, your decisions, and even your self-worth. You see, Stoicism isn't about ignoring relationships. It's about understanding the impermanence of external things and focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your choices, and your character. And this is where life flips, not magically, but through disciplined mental shifts. Because when you stop reaching out, stop chasing, stop reacting, you finally begin to observe yourself without distraction. You begin to notice patterns in your thinking, habits you've ignored, and desires you've blindly followed. The silence between you and them isn't empty, it's filled with insight, clarity, and perhaps the first real sense of freedom you felt in years. Now here's a question I want you to hold on to as we dive deeper. If this absence is actually the beginning of your liberation, what are you willing to let go of today to step fully into the life that's waiting on the other side of this silence? Stick with me, because in the next part, we'll explore exactly how the Stoics used separation, solitude, and emotional detachment, not as punishments, but as superpowers, and how you can apply these same strategies to completely flip your reality without losing yourself or your humanity. Now, let's explore even more profoundly what happens when both of you stop contacting each other, and why this moment of silence can feel like either a collapse or a rebirth, depending on how you navigate it.
Picture the very first morning after the silence has fully set in. Your phone remains still. No messages, no good morning texts, no pings to reassure you that someone is thinking about you or to validate your existence. At first, it feels unbearable. Panic, confusion, and an acute sense of loss wash over you in waves. You might notice your stomach tightening, your chest aching, your mind racing through every conversation, every encounter, trying to decode what went wrong. You replay old messages, examine the tone of their words, and imagine scenarios that might never have existed, each one worse than the last. You begin to question yourself, your choices, your worth, and even the meaning of your own life. But here is the subtle, almost invisible truth that most people miss. This initial disorientation is not a punishment. It is the first crack in the shell that has been constraining your potential, and through that crack, transformation can enter. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The silence, in its raw essence, is neutral. Its meaning exists only in the interpretation your mind assigns it to. At this moment, your imagination is amplifying the absence, constructing fear, and projecting loss. But the reality, the Stoic reality, is far less dramatic. Seneca tells us we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most of the emotional pain you feel right now is created by your own mind, and the moment you recognize that, you reclaim control. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the pivotal lesson. Every unanswered message, every day of silence, is an opportunity to exercise mastery over your mind and emotions. Think of it as a training ground. Just as muscles grow stronger under resistance, your resilience, patience, and emotional clarity strengthen under the tension of absence. Let me give you a concrete story. Adam, a man who suddenly lost contact with someone he believed he could never live without, felt his world collapse. In the first week, he was consumed. He compulsively checked his phone, scrolled through old conversations, and replayed memories with obsessive clarity. The emotional weight felt unbearable. But then he remembered Epictetus's words about focusing only on what is within your control. Adam began a radical experiment in self-mastery, observing his thoughts without judgment, journaling his emotional responses, and analyzing his patterns of dependency. Slowly, the chaos began to settle. The silence that once terrified him transformed into a mirror, reflecting the strength and potential he had been ignoring. Over weeks, Adam noticed a profound shift. Mornings became freer, decisions became deliberate, and mental clarity emerged where confusion had reigned. The absence of contact ceased to be a punishment. It became a tool for transformation. Now consider Clara, a woman in her late 20s who faced abrupt silence from someone she loved deeply. The first few days were suffocating, filled with fear, anxiety, and the gnawing sensation of incompleteness. Social media only amplified her turmoil, each post and story a sharp reminder of absence. Yet she remembered Seneca's words, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Clara began to practice observation. She separated fear from fact, examined her emotions objectively, and started small routines to reclaim her agency, journaling, exercising, and reflecting on her values. Over time, she realized the silence was not empty. It was a sanctuary, a mirror revealing her untapped strength, clarity, and independence. The quiet, once painful, became a teacher. And here's a truth most modern people fail to understand. We live in an era of instant gratification, continuous attention, and constant validation. Silence feels like abandonment because we mistake attention for value. Stoicism flips that perspective. True value, freedom, and happiness emerge from self-mastery, clarity, and discipline. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all emphasized that external events, including the actions of those we love, are beyond our control. What matters is perception, response, and cultivation of inner virtue. Each pang of longing, each moment of discomfort is an invitation to practice resilience, patience, and emotional discipline. Here's a modern insight that will change how you see this entire experience. The very absence you fear is the catalyst for transformation. It forces confrontation with your habits, desires, and dependencies in ways constant contact never would. Each moment of longing becomes a teacher. Each moment of discomfort, a gym session for the mind. Your focus becomes sharper, your priorities clearer. Emotional energy that was once wasted on seeking validation now channels into growth, learning, and self-improvement. The life flip begins. The world outside may remain silent, but inside, your mental clarity, discipline, and emotional resilience expand exponentially. Imagine your life as a garden. Each unanswered message, each quiet day, removes the weeds of dependency, leaving space for new growth, clarity, and flourishing. Now here's an open loop to carry with you. What if the very silence you terrify, the absence of calls, messages, or attention, is actually the spark that will ignite the life you were meant to live? In the next section, we'll reveal practical Stoic exercises and reflection techniques drawn directly from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus that transform isolation into a superpower. We'll show how to turn abandonment into liberation, longing into mastery, and fear into unstoppable momentum. And here's the final hook I want you to carry. The life flip isn't something that happens to you. It's something you can command. The absence you dread is not the end. It is the catalyst for a version of yourself stronger, freer, and more disciplined than you have ever been. By the end of this video, you will understand why silence, distance, and non-contact are not losses at all. They're the most powerful forces shaping your ultimate self, if only you are willing to embrace them.
Now that you've begun to understand the quiet power hidden in non-contact, let's explore exactly how to turn this silence into a force that reshapes your life, using strategies the Stoics mastered centuries ago, but which remain eerily relevant today. Imagine for a moment that the absence of messages, calls, or attention is like a vast, empty stage. The actors, the people, the distractions, the urgencies of life are gone, and what remains is you, center stage, facing yourself. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on this kind of solitude, reminding himself, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The key insight is simple but powerful. If you learn to occupy this stage wisely, to direct your attention deliberately, and to discipline your thoughts, you can become the architect of your own destiny. Let's break this down into practical exercises, starting with observation. The first task is to observe your mind, every craving, fear, or impulse that arises in response to absence. Write it down, analyze it, and notice patterns. Epictetus taught that awareness is the first step toward freedom. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In modern terms, this is a mental audit. Every time a pang of longing strikes, instead of reacting, note it, question it. Ask yourself, is this fear rational? Is this desire productive? Is this attachment serving my growth? Or is it a tether dragging me backwards? This is more than mindfulness. It is Stoic conditioning. And when done consistently, it rewires your mental responses from reactive to deliberate. Next comes reframing. Silence is never inherently negative. As Seneca advised, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Each unanswered message, each day without contact, is a challenge designed to fortify your inner strength. Instead of viewing absence as a void, treat it as a space for growth, reflection, and expansion. Consider a practical example. Imagine a woman named Lila who experienced abrupt silence from someone she deeply cared for. Initially, she felt powerless, adrift in anxiety. But by applying Stoic reframing, she started to see every silent day as an opportunity, a day to meditate,
a day to write, a day to focus on work, skill building, or self-reflection. Within weeks, she noticed a transformation. She no longer craved external validation, and paradoxically, her relationships began to improve, not because she changed anyone else, but because her inner state changed first. The third strategy is deliberate action. Stoicism emphasizes that observation and reflection are only valuable when paired with action aligned with virtue. What does this look like in modern life? It's taking the time you previously invested in monitoring someone else's attention and putting it into personal growth. Exercise, learn a new skill, build routines that strengthen your mind, body, and discipline. Each action compounds, creating an unshakable foundation that the chaos of external silence cannot disturb. Imagine Adam from our earlier story applying this. He begins each morning with a clear routine, journaling, reviewing his goals, and practicing gratitude. By midday, he's working on meaningful projects, and by evening, he spends time in reflection and study. The absence of contact no longer defines him. It fuels him. The fourth technique is perspective shifting. Marcus Aurelius consistently reminded himself of the impermanence of all things, the transient nature of relationships, and the futility of attaching his peace to others. Modern life offers constant reminders of scarcity and loss, but through perspective, silence becomes a teacher. Ask yourself, what am I gaining from this period? What am I learning about my emotional triggers, my values, and my personal boundaries? What habits am I forming that will serve me for decades to come? This is not escapism. It's preparation for a stronger, more autonomous life. Now, here's where the true magic of this approach begins. When you practice observation, reframing, deliberate action, and perspective shifting consistently, silence transforms from something painful into a superpower. You start to experience what the Stoics called apatheia, a state of emotional equilibrium in which external events no longer dictate your inner peace. Imagine feeling completely unshaken by unanswered messages or the absence of attention, because you've anchored your value, identity, and energy in your own character. This is the essence of the life flip. What once seemed like loss becomes liberation. What felt like abandonment becomes freedom. What terrified you now becomes your training ground for mastery. And here's the open loop to keep in mind. If the absence of contact is a mirror, reflecting your attachments and desires, what would you discover about yourself if you looked closely, without distraction, for just 1 month? How different could your emotional landscape become if you stopped investing energy in the uncontrollable and focused entirely on cultivating the controllable? In the next section, we will explore real-life transformations where individuals applied these Stoic principles and completely flipped their lives, achieving clarity, resilience, and self-mastery beyond anything they imagined. We'll uncover the subtle but powerful ways in which non-contact, once feared, now embraced, can rebuild relationships, reinforce self-respect, and prepare you to navigate life with the calm certainty of a Stoic sage. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand not only how to survive silence, but how to wield it as your ultimate tool for freedom, growth, and unstoppable personal power.
Now, let's take this even further, because understanding Stoicism intellectually is one thing, but applying it in the raw, emotionally charged reality of life is another. Imagine that the silence you've been dreading isn't just a pause between messages. It's the most powerful laboratory for your mind and your character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Right now, the quality of your thoughts is being tested, stretched, and forced to evolve. Every pang of longing, every moment of anxiety or regret is a signal. The universe is presenting you with a challenge, not to punish you, but to forge your inner strength. Think about it. When both parties stop contacting each other, your habitual reactions are stripped away. You can no longer soothe your fear by reaching out. You can no longer distract yourself with constant interaction. The rawness of silence forces you to confront the most uncomfortable questions. Who am I without their attention? What defines my worth if it is not measured by external validation? How resilient can I become when I cannot rely on anyone else to reassure me? Seneca advised, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In modern terms, what he's really saying is that dependence on others for emotional stability is a form of poverty. The silence you're experiencing is the doorway to true wealth, wealth of the mind, discipline, and self-reliance. Let's make this practical. Start by transforming every moment of discomfort into conscious reflection. Every time a wave of longing or anxiety hits, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what is within my control right now? Can I direct my energy toward action rather than reaction? Can I channel this emotional intensity into growth, creativity, or purpose? This simple practice, repeated consistently, turns emotional turbulence into a catalyst for strength. And here's a modern-day illustration. Imagine Sarah, a young professional whose relationship abruptly went silent. At first, she felt lost, constantly checking her phone, scrolling social media, analyzing the past. But then she remembered the Stoic principle of controlling perception. She decided to observe her emotional responses like an experiment, documenting every thought and impulse. Over weeks, Sarah began to notice a remarkable shift. The anxiety she once felt had less power over her. Her focus, previously fragmented by worry, sharpened. Her mornings became devoted to routines that fueled her body, mind, and spirit. Within months, she realized that the absence of contact had not been a loss at all. It had been an opportunity to reclaim her time, her energy, and her life. Now let's talk about a subtle but critical aspect of this transformation: the recalibration of desires. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that we should desire only what is under our control. Desire for attention, affection, or approval from another person lies outside that boundary. The moment contact stops, the Stoic principle comes alive. If you can shift your desire from what you cannot control to what you can, your actions, your growth, your discipline, you begin to feel a freedom few ever experience. Here's a practical exercise. Every morning, list 3 things you will focus on that are entirely within your control. It could be a productive habit, a personal project, or even the way you respond emotionally throughout the day. Then, each time thoughts of absence creep in, consciously redirect your attention to these controllable actions. This simple act creates a feedback loop of empowerment. And here's where the life flip reaches its most transformative stage. When you repeatedly practice reflection, recalibration, and action in the context of silence, something remarkable happens. Emotional detachment begins to coexist with compassion. Clarity replaces confusion, and presence supplants anxiety. The very experience that once made you feel powerless becomes your training ground for mastery. Imagine looking back 6 months from now. The person you once feared losing has become a peripheral part of your life, and your energy, time, and attention have been reclaimed. You are not cold or indifferent. You are clear, deliberate, and unshakable. This is the essence of Stoic freedom. And here's the open loop I want to leave dangling as we move into the next section. If complete silence can bring such profound transformation, what might happen if you take it further, intentionally embracing solitude, self-reflection, and detachment as daily practices? What if you could accelerate this process, turning life's natural pauses into superpowers for emotional mastery, resilience, and ultimate clarity? In the next paragraph, we will explore how to fully harness these insights to flip your life in ways you never imagined, transforming absence, silence, and separation into the ultimate engines of growth, confidence, and unstoppable personal power.
Now it's time to bring everything together. to take the silence, the absence, and the pause that once terrified you and turn it into the ultimate force for transformation. Imagine standing at the edge of your life as it was before, the one where your emotional state was tethered to messages, attention, and validation from someone else. Now imagine stepping into a new reality, one where your inner calm, your focus, and your sense of worth are anchored entirely in yourself. This is not hypothetical. This is exactly what the Stoics aimed for. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And what we've been exploring is nothing less than a complete recalibration of thought quality. Every pang of longing, every moment of anxiety, every uncomfortable silence has been a teacher, guiding you toward mastery. Now, you understand that the absence of contact is not a void, it is fertile ground. It is where self-discipline is forged, where emotional control becomes natural, and where resilience grows strong enough to withstand anything life throws at you. Epictetus teaches us that external events cannot harm the mind unless we allow them to. This is the life flip in action. The same silence that once caused despair now becomes the crucible of freedom, clarity, and unstoppable momentum. Let's bring this to life with a story. Imagine Jordan, a man who once equated his happiness with constant connection to someone he loved. Each unanswered message felt like a personal rejection, each day of silence a reminder of inadequacy. But by applying Stoic principles, observation, reframing, deliberate action, and perspective shifting, he transformed his experience. Jordan began to focus on what was within his control: his routines, his goals, his self-discipline, and the cultivation of virtue. Slowly, he noticed a profound change. Anxiety became clarity. Fear became focus. Dependence became autonomy. And here's the extraordinary part. His relationships, far from being damaged, began to improve. Why? Because he no longer approached others from a place of need, but from a place of presence, strength, and emotional balance. This is the essence of Stoic mastery: freedom without isolation, compassion without dependency, connection without compromise. And now let's make this practical for you. First, embrace deliberate solitude. Set aside time each day to reflect, journal, and observe your thoughts without distraction. Second, cultivate emotional detachment. Each time longing or fear arises, pause. Identify what is within your control and redirect your energy toward action. Third, build routines that strengthen your body, mind, and character. Exercise, study, skill building, these are your anchors, your shields against the turbulence of external uncertainty. Fourth, reframe every pang of absence as a lesson, every moment of discomfort as a tool, every quiet day as an opportunity to reclaim your life. And finally, anchor your value internally. No one else's attention, approval, or presence should dictate your peace or your sense of self. This is the culmination of Stoic thought, the transformation of fear into freedom, longing into strength, and absence into abundance. Now, here's the final, most powerful open loop to keep you motivated. Consider the life you will live 6 months from now if you fully apply these principles. The person who once feared silence now masters it. The one who once sought validation now generates it internally. The one who reacted is now deliberate, disciplined, and unstoppable. And here's the ultimate secret the Stoics have passed down. Life flips not when circumstances change, but when your perception and response evolve. When you embrace silence, detachment, and self-mastery, every ending becomes a beginning, every absence becomes a teacher, and every pause and connection becomes a launch pad for your highest self. So here's your call to action. Take this moment of non-contact, this silence that may feel unbearable, and wield it deliberately. Journal, reflect, train, act, and reframe. Transform it into the foundation of your resilience, clarity, and freedom. Because when you do, you will not just survive absence, you will thrive in ways that silence itself could never have allowed. Remember Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. External circumstances are fleeting, but mastery of your mind and character is eternal. This is your life flip. This is your transformation. And from this moment forward, you will never again allow anyone's presence or absence to dictate the strength, peace, or power of the life you are destined to live.